Thank you everyone for joining this version of Summer Sessions. Today we're talking about the DSP, everything that you need to know about the Amazon DSP and specifically moving up the funnel. Today we're joined by Glomski, EVP of Commerce from PMG, as well as Perpetua's own Lisa Senensky, our DSP lead. Welcome, Price and Lisa. It's great to have you here.
Thanks. Excited
Happy to be here. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Price, would love to start with you. I know that PMG had been does lots of programmatic display advertising and predates well before the Amazon DSP. Can you guys speak to your journey into getting those first initial clients onto the Amazon DSP? Were they endemic? Were they non-endemic? How did you approach it? What was the impetus behind it? And go ahead.
Yeah, I think it starts probably, this is probably a feeling that a lot of the folks that have worked with Amazon before, is that I think probably three and a half years ago, when it was with AMG, AMS, whenever everything translated over for managed service, was we initially were hands off, saying, I don't know if we want to get into this side of the DSP, because we were happy with Trade Desk. We were happy with our access on what is now, the greater DV360 Google stack. But we knew that within Amazon, just the access to the level of customer data and intent was much, much different. And we saw the performance that was happening through some of our larger 1P enterprise deals. But what we also struggled with, and this was, again, no shot at Amazon, but I think originally with the Amazon managed service business, we lacked a lot of access to data, if any, and a lot of that reporting came, at a monthly basis or at a campaign level. And as a very data-driven agency, and every agency says that, but we do obsess over the single impressions, and our goal is, if we can't make a decision or glean an insight on a daily or weekly basis, then it's really hard for us to go in and provide any value. So the brands can go direct or whatever they want to do. But I think Amazon needed to get, once they started providing better ARA access, once we got in and actually got reporting on 3 days a week versus every 14 days, that kind of initiated it for us. We work with a large consumer electronics company that has a really strong relationship with Amazon, and they depend on it. I apologize for the lawnmower in the background. But once we saw the light, and once we saw how much volume and unit value that we could drive through the DSP, and that was specifically with the AMG team, that predated us actually getting there and pulling the levers. We got excited about it, and we saw that for the brands that are actively selling on 1P. We saw that for brands that were selling on 3P side, but then also non-endemic folks that you would never think would be engaged with Amazon or look at them as a competitor, jumped in probably 9 to 12 months ago, and it's been a ride. I won't say that it's been perfect. I've said we've probably broken the platform more than we've expected it to, but the overall value is definitely proving itself, and that's come to fruition over the last 6 months.
And specifically, Price, for non-endemic brands, i.e. those brands that do not sell on Amazon, how do you demonstrate that value compared to other display campaigns that you're running for them? Are you demonstrating that value in the richness of the audiences that you can create? Are the results simply that much better with Amazon DSP campaigns? What is that value creation at both the kind of pitch stage to the execution and reporting stage of those client engagements?
Yeah, I think the best, I'll try to abbreviate my answer a little bit here. So we work with a lot of retailers, and so Q4, of course, is seasonally is just, you've got to be aggressive, you've got to be creative. And what we noticed was within our portfolio, none of our retailers that were non-endemic either looked at Amazon as a complete competitor, or they worried about the risk of the brand being associated to Amazon. And they didn't realize that buying Amazon DSP inventory means that you actually don't have to be on Amazon.com. You use them as a partner to get in front of consumers that have a high intent against a pair of jeans. So it was easy. It became relatively easy for us because we could go in and say, based on the insights that we're seeing through our portfolio, we know that Amazon has the ability to target at a different level based on the affinity of somebody wanting to buy, for example, a pair of jeans. And so instead of us going after the same customer, which I think a lot of people do, it's, really heavy up on retargeting. We took the opposite approach on that and completely took out retargeting from a number of our campaigns and just used it wholly as the prospecting channel. And that prospecting channel, we also applied return metrics to that, saying, we know that we have to break even here. So this doesn't mean that we're just going to go out and spray and pray until we build this cohort. Our goal was to go in and drive a 3-to-1 or a 10-to-1. And until we got to that point, we knew that we needed 14 to 30 days to really prove it out based on a customer life cycle, but then also the way that Amazon reports out units sold or their acquisition within the reporting. And so it's been easier, to be honest, because I think a lot of the retailers, and in some cases, like the non-endemic brands, like we work with a national review site that uses Amazon to get in front of customers for somebody that wants to go look at a new dishwasher. And that's a perfect place to go after that. And we've just become really creative with video assets that are running through Amazon, which is one of their stronger channels. Like if you want to go test OTT, they've got a tremendous network to go in and start working to. I hate using the word tremendous, but I'll take that one out. On the other side of it too, for retail, go and use it as prospecting, and don't assume that within the first 10 to 14 days that you're going to break even, but you can start assuming that these prospecting programs are going to eventually hit in a 30 to 45 day window. You should begin to start seeing some traction when it comes to return.
Right, that's interesting. And so, Lisa, I know OTT campaigns are a subject that is near and dear to our hearts at Perpetua. The clients that you work with aren't necessarily national retailers, but typically endemic brands that are very ROAS sensitive. And in your conversations with those clients, how have you positioned OTT and what's the buy-in been like? And in the instances in which you have been able to test, how have you found telling stories with the right metrics for OTT campaigns to those clients?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a harder sell with our customer base, which is primarily endemic brands that do sell on Amazon. So a lot of our customers are very ROAS focused, and having the conversations about OTT, it's very critical to let them know that the ROAS that they're seeing is going to decrease significantly by putting a lot of spend towards upper funnel prospecting, consideration, tactics. So I think a lot of the conversation is spent on education and just having them understand what they can expect by allocating their spend there. And as Price said, setting the expectation that you're not going to see results immediately. You're not going to see the incremental sales growth right away, but we do believe that investing here really helps bring the new to brand customers that are super critical in your long-term value and the strategy for many brands. So I think just ensuring that you're providing that education and some of the metrics that we do look at when we're looking at upper funnel advertising is like estimated cost per detailed page view. So how many people, like how efficiently it is to bring a new to brand customer to your detailed page view. So
and Lisa, is there a benchmark for what's a good estimated cost per detailed page view that you advise clients on, or is it vary for every single product and category?
Yeah, it definitely varies by category and by product. I would say that on average, maybe $1 to $2 range, but definitely varies by category. Some are much more competitive. But yeah, somewhere in that range, but it's very easy to run a upper funnel campaign and you're testing the campaign through many different segments, and you can quickly see If there's a large portion of segments that are above the $2 range, there's a lot of room to move around budget and effectively manage the campaign to a lower estimated cost per detail page view just by running many different segments.
What does that mean exactly?
So always when
it sounds great. It sounds really good. Like everyone wants to get a lower estimated cost per detail page view. What does that mean?
So depending on the customer, like I would never recommend just testing one segment. And the way that we set up our campaigns, we take a lot of time into creating many different line items for those of you that know what line items are. But essentially this just gives us visibility at a really granular level, how a specific product and segment is performing. So we at Amazon are able to use these in-market or lifestyle audiences, and we can test many different in-market or lifestyle audiences. We can layer them together and just see how the different combinations perform, and see how they perform in different inventories. And then from there, look at those results and either reduce spend from the line items that aren't performing well, push spend towards line items that are performing well in terms of that estimated cost per detail page view.
Got it. And Price, you've introduced a concept, or at least a word that we found really engaging. So this idea of audienceship. And so, you know, a lot of people are going to go for these upper funnel campaigns and build that reach and build that awareness. But how do you take the customer along the journey of the advertising funnel and along different touch points with different creative and different messaging, and guide them along that journey, while also telling stories with different metrics along those journeys to your clients?
Yeah, and I'll kind of start with the audience shift. Like, just the definition for us internally is that we work with a lot of folks that look at their audience on Amazon, and it's completely different than what they might have direct to consumer or .com, or even in like a retail store. As we kind of expect, like if you see your audience on Instagram and Facebook, it's probably, you're going to have overlap on Amazon, but the folks that are buying it are maybe at this moment a lot different. So maybe you're skewing heavy female, not identified, and then you have a really low male contingency in this. Like, our goal is to go in and figure out, okay, well, we need to sell X product. We know that men on Facebook are buying this at, you know, 70% clip over what females are. So there's a volume in here that we need to hit and figure out where that cohort meets. So using two different things, and some of this depends on volume, is the brand analytics channel that gives you profiles and demographics. And now the DSP has insights reporting, or has started to roll that out and data to a lot of folks. Perpetua was actually one of the first partners that we worked with that had full access to that. And then we kind of fast followed on it as well. But using that insights data to show, okay, over the last 30 days, we've shifted male, female, or non-identified by 15 or 20% based on creative, based on the product that we're showing to that cohort. And then two, what I was going to bring up, or three, what I was going to bring up when Lisa was walking through it a minute ago was, you have the ability to go in and look at inventory sources within Amazon, and it's supply source and domain or app sources. And that's similar to what you would do if you were managing through another DSP partner. But it gives you the ability to go in and see, okay, I'm running on Yahoo Finance, I'm running on weather.com, I'm running on live.com, MSN, and then Amazon. Out of this, my makeup or my demographic is X, but you can almost suppress X or add back in one of these sites just to like holistically start with a bigger net against the demographic that you're trying to go against. And I just rattle off quite a few things, but I think to answer another part of your question too, Adam, is creative is really, really important. And we haven't found the kind of cure-all to figuring out creative on Amazon, because Amazon hasn't figured it out. Like, are they going to go fully dynamic creative, which works really well? I mean, that's part of the reason that sponsored display ads within the ad console platform is doing really, really well, but it's also competing with a part of the DSP inventory. And we can get into that in a little bit, but I think creative on Amazon itself on .com is tough because you have to make it native, I believe, because Amazon is not it's not a pretty site, and I'll just say that it's just not. It's functional, and you have like a store page like Nintendo Switch, which is really attractive. But then you go to some of our softline retail, and the A+ is just kind of like, meh, it doesn't look good, but it functions and it converts highly, and they know that. So at this point, you don't have to spend as much time there. When you're off-site, that's when I think the creative gets really challenging. And you start with, from our side, we start with social assets that we've been using, that we've seen high engagement with, or any of our other dynamic display inventory that we've been running outside of Amazon, and start whittling it down. The top performers, despite what they look like, the dynamic e-commerce, you can go and spend $500 against a specific ASIN or product and get top performance through those ads. And Lisa was kind of getting into it in a minute ago, but that is the best starter kit. That's where I would always recommend going. Is if you're endemic to the platform, use dynamic e-commerce, because it does work, and you can start very small with, you know, a daily budget of $50 to get it rolling and start blowing it out that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Lisa, how do you advise clients on where they should use custom creative versus dynamic e-commerce creative on the funnel?
Yeah, definitely bottom of the funnel. We've seen the dynamic e-commerce creative work really well, outperform custom creative. I definitely have also been experimenting, tweaking the dynamic e-commerce creative, adding in reviews or a logo and call to action. And I think that playing around with those levers has helped enhance the performance. So definitely some customization has been helpful, even at the bottom of the funnel, because it still looks like an Amazon-esque ad. And definitely going up the funnel, we've really recently seen a lot of success in using video, especially to capture new to brand customers. So I would definitely recommend testing video upper funnel, and just custom creatives at that point tend to start to outperform the dynamic e-commerce.
Regardless of actual, go ahead, Bryce.
I was gonna say, Lisa, have you guys, you know, like we're active on the video and search, which we know has a higher engagement, and it works really well for brands that, you know, either well-known brands that are up and coming D2C. We also know that the PDP pages, it's critical to start annotating or like having video that's within your PDP. I know you guys have the product that will help recreate assets or create assets for video. Are you using the PDP based assets to do that? Or are you guys working with brands to help just build with assets that they have on their side before they go onto the PDP?
Yeah, I think we've definitely experimented with both, and with Perpetua providing this tool to easily build these video assets, we've definitely started experimenting with those, and those are showing early good results. I mean, it's only been a few months now since we started using those assets for upper funnel ads. And I think what's nice about them is they're usually shorter, and some of the video assets that we've been using with brands are typically a little longer, and having them be that shorter time constraint has been helpful in the results that we've seen, and also ensuring that they meet the creative requirements, which can be difficult.
Yeah, and Price, not to toot Perpetua's horn here, that product that you're referring to is for sponsored brand video. We created a video creator that allows you to create video assets in 45 seconds across all of your ASINs. Pretty impactful. It's up to the brand to determine how they leverage that asset. They can use it on the PDP thereafter.
I was going to say, like, I know that's interesting to me, because I think it's a good way to create. You could use that asset within the DSP, right?
Yeah.
Correct. If you wanted to,
and that's
like,
what
depending on if it's a 6 second or. With. Okay, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, Price, you alluded.
The biggest.
You alluded to the sponsored display inventory, and I think that that's a really interesting subject that we think a lot about right now, because display inventory above the fold on a product detail page is absolutely invaluable and is almost as valuable as top of search real estate on the search page. And we've actually been shocked by some of the results that we've seen on that inventory in both testing DSP and sponsored display product targeting. Lisa, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for months before, we've been testing sponsored display retargeting versus retargeting on the DSP, and consistently we've been able to outperform on the retargeting front. But now with contextual targeting through or product targeting through sponsored display, and being able to test that against what's available on the DSP, early results are showing that we have been able to do quite well through the DSP. There are many differences, of course. DSP is CPM based, where SD is CPC. So there is a lot more research that needs to be done into understanding the results better. But I think that it will be valuable to use the DSP, but I think there may be value to using both in conjunction. We just haven't fully figured it out yet.
I think the alignment comes down to, I agree. First, I think it's really funny that Amazon's competing against themselves, but I also get why. It's like better, best. Like can sponsored display punk out DSP, or DSP do the same? And I think the product's really good. I like that it's intertwined within the same interface, of course. I mean, it just makes it easy from an operational standpoint. It does have limitations when it comes down to targeting, but we use it mainly, and this is the sponsored display within the console. We use that as a product to easily basically take on real estate around our product pages. So if we have a Cole Haan shoe and Cole Haan's going to get hammered by competition within the ad units on that PDP, we'll use the sponsored display as a way for us to basically defend that territory and re-merchandise other Cole Haan products on that page. The DSP can do that as well. It's a little harder because the product to brand match, which they just released, I think this week or last week, it does make it a little bit easier with some of the bulk implementation on the DSP side. You can do that in bulk, but I think it's just a really, I now like that they're competing because I think the products are getting better faster. Yeah.
When we talk about retargeting, I know that a big concern for a lot of our advertisers is whether or not that retargeting ad that you're seeing is going to be an organic purchase, regardless of whether they see an ad or not. And cannibalizing an organic purchase and focusing on incrementality is a really important piece. And I think that a lot of people aren't thinking about it right now. But I'd love to know, Lisa, how you think about it in the ways that you create DSP campaigns and how you tend to focus on incrementality.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's always top of mind for us and our customers. And recently we've released a couple of features actually in the Perpetua app that make it a lot easier for us to evaluate how our campaigns on the DSP are affecting incrementality of total sales, because we're able to see total sales and DSP sales all in one dashboard. And one of the metrics that we look at is blended ACoS. So your total ad spend over total sales. And on when you're launching a DSP campaign or when you make any changes, we're always looking at that blended ACoS metric to ensure that that's not going up, so that if you're spending more, you're seeing that incremental total sales growth. And there's a lot of levers at play that we've experimented with to try and make tweaks to see what is really impacting that. And I think look back windows are one of them. So when you're running a retargeting campaign, you're looking at people who viewed your product pages in the last, let's say 30 days, but haven't purchased. Depending on the brand and the category, we've tested things like delaying starting retargeting, maybe only after 5 days. So like 5 to 30 days instead of going from that 0 to 30 day look back. If you think that customers will organically come back within the first few days, of course, there is a chance that at that time, it's the most critical time to retarget them. And it may make sense to spend even if you are slightly cannibalizing organic sales. So that's one of the levers. Another thing that we recently started to look at is the purchase views versus purchase clicks. And when you're looking at a retargeting campaign, you will notice that a lot of your purchases come from people who only viewed your ad rather than clicked into it and showed that engagement with it. I think the split at a retargeting campaign could be as much as 90% are purchases based on views, and 10% are people who actually clicked on the ad that showed more engagement. Compared to when you're looking more top of funnel, the distribution's more like 60-40. So what that tells me is that when you're targeting like a customer who may not be familiar with your brand, it is still possible for them to be to have engaged with the ad and then decide to purchase. But I think the distribution and when we're looking at total sales, we need to kind of discount the purchase views when we're looking at that retargeting segment to really understand the impact of the DSP campaign and its incremental value. So all that to say, to sum up, I think we're really focusing on trying to enhance our clicks on the ads and see if that really helps enhance incremental total sales growth, because we believe that having people engage with the actual ad is correlated with that incremental sales growth. And it's not to say that people who view an ad, they aren't being, they aren't purchasing because they viewed the ad, but I think just enhancing those clicks and focusing on getting those clicks will really help with the total sales.
All right. And price, for most of your clients, they're a slightly higher average order value than your typical Amazon purchase, in that you work with various apparel brands and electronic brands. Do you think about retargeting a little bit differently than most Amazon advertisers due to that higher average order value?
I think so. I mean, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, like in some campaigns, we completely cut out retargeting from Amazon's DSP. Like we'll still have retargeting set up through another partner, but we use it, in that case, we'll use Amazon primarily as a prospecting engine for non-endemic brands. But we've also, I mean, to Lisa's point, like I agree with her percentages on the 90-10 and 60-40. That pretty much aligns with what we've seen as well. I think retargeting, it can be really powerful for them if you're using an Amazon pixel on a .com. So say that you have a fairly nascent D2C brand where you've just launched .com. You haven't placed an Amazon pixel on there yet. Maybe you're a little worried about them gathering too much customer information. The reality is Amazon's going to gather your customer information somehow, somewhere. But use that to your advantage for both suppression and then also prospecting. I think, and when I say it's like retargeting prospecting, so they've come to your site, they didn't purchase on .com. And then they go to Amazon and they have an affinity towards the same product in your competition. How do you continue to get in front of that customer that has not yet shopped you? Maybe, according to Google Analytics, it's still a first-time visitor or new customer. That's a really critical person to be in front of, and use Amazon as a retargeting metric or a retargeting platform offsite. So use that pixel to do that and capture them on Amazon or capture them on D2C if you're non-endemic. But I don't think it's retargeting has its place. I think it can be grossly overused, meaning people, if you invest too much there, then you're going to water down the rest of your profile and potential customer base. And we all know that. It is a safety net, but it can also dilute the brand. And I think if you're not feeding that in the right way, then you're wasting a lot of money, because most likely you are getting it organically. So
let's talk about
it comes down to a
like
lot of testing.
when you're doing media planning for one of your clients, We can talk about the whole Amazon stack of media planning, but when we talk about like DSP media planning, I know that it's really tough. Every client's different, but if you're, I'm just putting round numbers, if we have $100,000 to spend on a client on a DSP campaign, how would you divide up that $100,000 a month? Let's call it a month. How would you divide that up based on the first month, second month, and the third month of working with an advertiser?
Yeah, really good question. One of the things that we had to force ourselves to stop thinking about is Amazon. Is that $100,000 only being distributed on Amazon? So if you have $100,000, what percentage of that, but you're trying to sell on Amazon, what percentage of that should be traffic driving to Amazon that's not within the Amazon portfolio? So you have $100,000, you've got Facebook, Instagram, you have affiliate, which kind of messy now with Amazon. You have influencer.
Let's assume whatever. It's 100,000 just Amazon DSP.
Of Amazon, got it.
Not even sponsored. Let's get to sponsored in a bit. 100,000 just DSP.
Yeah, so you're a brand that has access to, so you have access to limited video, but you've got video. I think when you're thinking awareness funnels, so OTT and some of the more, the broader audience targets at the top for Amazon, you need to have about 20% of your budget allocated to that for the first, and you're running that $100,000 over a 60-day sprint. For the first 2 weeks to 3 weeks, you're going to spend 20 of that 20%. You're going to spend about 80%. So you're going to feed it to start seeing where your product and how the behavior of the consumer is happening, how the DPV values are changing, and if you're really getting engaged traffic both on the creative but also on your product pages. So you're feeding with OTT and then broader awareness. It can be static images and then driving it down. And for us, then you start looking at interest targeting that's associated. That's very broad, but you can have an interest target down to an nth-degree. I mean, that's one of the best things about Amazon is you really can start cycling down. Like they give you health and fitness, off the top of my head, I mean, there are 400 categories, but you can go in and get to a very specific 2 or 3 things. That means that your CPM is increasing. But if you know who you're going to target and you don't have any external, you don't have live ramp, or you don't have these other feeds that are going to come in and help really justify who your consumer is, I think you start at the top and learn and be okay with that money that you're investing. And then what you've learned from that, you start shifting down into this retargeting or into suppression. We talked a little bit earlier about—
And Price, what's suppression?
Oh, sorry. So suppression for us is we don't want these customers to see us. Like sometimes it's easier to negative out folks that you don't want to be seen in there. So either you can use the Amazon pixel on your .com to say, I don't want any of those folks to be seen if we're just showing on Amazon properties. So you can negate it basically. For us, that cleans it up because maybe we have a full price shopper that's off of Amazon, but we know that everybody that's buying from us on Amazon is at a discount of 10%. Then I don't want to move that full price shopper over to somebody that's going to buy at a 10% discount. So we try to suppress that up front. And another way to do that is you can use CRM. Some people are a little weary about providing Amazon with, here's all my email addresses that we're going to obfuscate and then give to Amazon, but we're going to suppress them or we're going to target them. But I do think, much like Facebook and Google, you're doing the same thing there. Use that to your advantage on suppression to ensure that you're getting the right creative, but also you're serving the right message to the person that is already a buyer that you may not want to shift down the funnel if you are selling a different price good or your margin's higher in another area. So I think it's just playing with it. And back to I know I'm rambling a little bit, the percentage wise, it's 20 up top, feed it in the middle, you're going to spend most of your money there. So let's say 50 to 60%, and then the remaining amount is going to be acquisition or retention. And that sounds, because it's typically flipped to where 70 is acquisition retention. That's the hard thing to get out of. And it takes a couple months to get comfortable with that. But once you do, then the acquisition and retention budget is the same of what you were spending, but now you're taking Now this bucket is helping feed that, and it's just a much healthier mix.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that was really helpful, Price. I appreciate that. And Lisa, in having some conversations with you, you tend to coach people into moving up rather than starting up and then moving down. You tend to coach people and moving up. So typically those customers that are not so comfortable with a $100,000 DSP budget, but are more comfortable with a $10,000 DSP budget, that are spending, let's call it 30 or 40K on sponsored ads. One, how do you coach customers into thinking about how much they should allocate to the DSP, whether it be initially or getting more and more buy-in to move up upper funnel? And I know that I just say this because I was on a pitch with your team yesterday. I think a metric that I find really interesting that you guys talk to customers about across the funnel is cumulative reach. So you can kind of speak to how customers should think about media planning and where cumulative reach comes into that.
Yeah, that was a large question. So I think that in general, talking to any customer who either they have never tested out the Amazon DSP, or in a lot of cases, they've used it and have had a poor experience. So initially starting at the bottom of the funnel where you know you're going to see returns, like a lot of these sellers or brands that we're working with, they're the ones who are running the sponsored ad campaigns that are very focused on the ACOS, which on the DSP, the relative is ROAS. So starting at the bottom of the funnel and setting the expectation of where we expect them to fall in terms of ROAS, in looking at their sponsored ad performance, and sort of with our experience, we've been able to gauge what we can expect based on what targeting we're running. So if it's retargeting with a certain look back window, we have a good idea of what ROAS we're expected to see. And we're also able to gauge based on their sponsored performance, in addition to their organic traffic, how large their retargeting pool is to begin with. So we know with any given budget, give or take, what their performance is going to look like. And I found that starting at a smaller budget and being able to show strong results really gets people comfortable, their feet wet with running DSP ads in general. And once they're comfortable with that, they're more comfortable in understanding all of the levers and audience capabilities that are available on the DSP, and are more willing to continue that conversation and talk about how they can continue to grow using the DSP, but not so much focused on ROAS.
And then once, let's say, customer has been working on the DSP for, let's call it 3 to 4 months, you built that trust. How do you think about managing budget across both sponsored and DSP?
Yeah, I think that it will depend on your goal as a brand or a seller in general, because depending at the stage you are as a brand or seller, if you're new to Amazon, you may be more comfortable growing and really wanting to expand your audience, in which case it may make more to spend on DSP than on sponsored. I think in general, there is a lot more opportunity to spend on DSP. As you get more and more comfortable, I think the ratio would be around 1-to-1, potentially 1.5 to 1 for on DSP.
I was about to, at least I'll almost 100% agree with that. I think, and this is the biggest challenge over the last, and this is probably specific to it, as we work with a lot of retail. I mean, COVID has completely adjusted the way that we buy. But I think if we look at Evergreen, our Evergreen is typically our sponsored brand and sponsored product. Like we know that we have $100. That $100 probably could be spent, and we wouldn't hit a ceiling for our Evergreen. Everybody could spend more there for a lot of the work that we're doing. When we know that we need to liquidate, we need to launch a new product, or we need to just increase the velocity of product, then it does go to a one-to-one. Like we currently have 3 different clients right now that they're spending $100. They're all spending $100. Now they're spending $200, but 100 is going to sponsor brand and product. The other 100 is going towards DSP. And then when we amp that up, if Prime Day was actually happening this year and not completely stalled out, then that number could be 2 to 3x on the DSP side. And then we have a gradual increase on sponsored brand. I think it really is how you're loading your audiences, but that evergreen piece has to be on the sponsored brand. Like for endemic brands, to your point, like focus on sponsored brand and sponsored product, make sure that that's healthy, and that you've almost hit a cap. And then when you hit that cap, that's when it's time to start testing and really feeding that market again.
So Price, you alluded to a period of time that we're all going to start to be needing to think about in the near future, which is what I've heard is the biggest Q4 ever, because Q4 is going to start at the beginning of October and everyone's purchasing on e-commerce. And so when there's high influxes of consumers on sponsored ads, really simple, increase budget, increase ACOS, it'll end up being more efficient, take advantage of those influx of consumers. When should people start to be thinking about their Q4 DSP campaigns and building that awareness for, let's assume that Prime Day begins early October. When should you start to be seeding those awareness campaigns to customers?
I think right now, like for the next 90 days, this is the time for you to be testing small budgets. I'm just figuring out where your comfort zone is and the products that resonate with the market and the creative that resonates with the type of. Because one of the things that we ran into last Q4 was Amazon had the inventory, and then so many people popped into market that the inventory either got really expensive or they just ran out of, like specifically on OTT, like we were maxing, or if we did an Amazon video buy, like it was maxing out just because there wasn't enough audience at that point. I don't think Amazon's going to run into that this year, just based on how how the Amazon partner network has been set up. But I think you need to get in early and test, so you have the ability to go in and secure your lines within the DSP and say, this is where I'm investing, let's go after it. And you need to have already been spending so that you're not turning it on November 1st, and it's going to take you 3 to 4 weeks to ramp, because it's an engine. Like it's trying to catch up. It's trying to learn. You need to be running 30 days before that, even if it's at a minimal amount, so that it's not a turn on, it's just a ramp up in budget. Yeah. So I'd say, to answer your question, it probably needs to start testing now if you can with small budgets. At the end of October, you need to be live if Q4 is a prime time for you. And then find your niche. You don't have to be everywhere. You can spend $10 million on Amazon DSP. You don't need to do that. You can spend a couple thousand and still be highly profitable and triple your sales, whatever your goal is. But it's a powerful tool that you just need to get ahead of.
Right. Lisa, are you starting to chat with people about Q4 and Prime Day, or is it not quite yet?
Starting to have a few chats about it for sure. I think definitely aligned with what Price said, just ensuring that we start early, understand what works, so that especially in regards to Prime Day, if it is sometime in October, ramping up budget significantly 30 days probably before to really focus on that brand awareness piece. And then probably for the 30 days thereafter, really taking advantage of the retargeting from that additional traffic that you hopefully saw around Prime Day.
Don't launch your DSP program on Prime Day or around Prime Day if you haven't done it before. It's not you'll burn through cash. You kind of need to have been active in market, not from experience. It's just more like you need to have the velocity of impression volume that's already set up within the account. Otherwise you'll just get eaten up. So that's just like a recommendation, not to stay away from it, but just be really careful if Prime happens this year, which I don't know if it will. If it does, then just be careful where you're spending.
Yeah, I don't think even the most unsophisticated advertisers know not to launch the first campaigns on the day. And the question becomes how much further before. And I think you touched on it, Bryce. It's a lot harder to ramp up a DSP campaign than a sponsored campaign. And what advertisers also don't appreciate is the laborious nature of creating a DSP campaign that doesn't exist on or isn't nearly as laborious on sponsored, where your operator and your agency, whether it be PMG or Perpetua, does need a sufficient amount of time to get that set up in order to get the best possible results. Were there any topics that
2 weeks of setup, and then you need 2 to 3 weeks of basically impression volume, I would say, to like build in. I think everybody needs, you got to have 2 weeks of build time for anything. Like it takes a long time. Although
so
you can
takes
turn
us
it in
into
2 days, like
late August.
Yes.
So if everyone planning, all of the DSP operators planning their end of summer vacation, take it now.
Yeah, everybody reach out to Perpetua right now, and Lisa will be very busy.
Fun. Were there any topics that we haven't touched on that you two would like to discuss?
I think for me, it was a platform that I did not want to work. And I'm very passionate about Amazon and making it work for brands that feel it is too risky. And the platforms changed my mind probably more so than any other. And I've been doing this for a long time. I feel like an old man in the industry, but the feedback is you need to be testing. If you have interest, do it. Like go for it, and de-risk it by just asking a ton of questions. Like honestly, reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever if you just have a question about it, and I'm happy to answer it. I know Lisa and team are the same on this side, but it just takes a lot. It takes a lot of testing, takes a lot of hands-on. Your internal teams, if you work with an agency, you need to have an internal team that gets it too. That is critical, and I just think it's worth it. It's worth the initial damage and front loading, just to help build brand and continue to grow your business.
Lisa, you want to add anything?
No, I completely agree. One question I did have, I was curious for prices, given that you work with many different DSPs, what would you say is lacking in the Amazon DSP that you're able to use in other DSPs?
I wrote this down because one of our experts internally, Katie, asked me to list this off, but I think it's the brand safety component. And that, you have the levers within there where you can select multiple brand safety deals, but I think it kind of falls off when it's serving off of Amazon owned and operated. And most of the brands that we work with are like, every brand's this way. Like you want to know where the inventory is sitting. You don't want to be against any critical content that exposes you to any type of heat, which is going to happen in throes right now. And I think Amazon's got a ways to go on really figuring out the brand safety and visualizing that and helping brands realize where they're being served and where they're not. They have partnerships right now that help do that, but I could be wrong, so I don't want to be completely off base on this, but I think it's on the Amazon owned and operated piece. Anything off of it, it becomes complicated there. And then I think the moment marketing, or what we call moment marketing, is something related to trying to think, like if you've got the Olympics that are coming up and the US wins gold, or Canada wins gold, how do we get in front of that group? How does Coca-Cola or somebody like that get in front of that group? Although they're probably going to own the entire internet at that point anyways. How does Amazon help us with each one of those moments? To Adam, you kept on bringing up the customer journey is getting way more prescriptive about that at a creative level. Right now you can do that. It is, again, very laborious to go in and set up the creative that way in order to have a functional journey. Like you can do it, but Amazon have the tech. They bought Seismic. Like let's use that to our advantage on Amazon to help drive moments within moments. So when the Olympics happen and 3 or 4 different wins or stories happen, make it easy within the OTT inventory or the other display inventory to get in front of that movement. And when it shuts off, it shuts off. But we can see that trend and measure against it and show the value of being alongside that message.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And so the way we end any summer session, little alliteration there, is asking our guests to come up with a prediction for Amazon in the next year. Everyone loves predictions, so I'll start with price, because I think you have something at the tip of your tongue, whereas Lisa, it looks like you could use a moment here. But what would be your
DSP, Amazon DSP, or just
could be advertising, could be the company. If you're an owner of the stock, quarterly earnings is coming out in the very near future. I think tonight, actually. So it could be any of the above. Advertising specific is preferred, but Lisa, if you have any strong convictions on AWS, you can dive into that as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, within the DSP, I'll stick with DSP and prediction for this. You can't, like, you can go in and target consumer packaged goods and then, you know, to the nth degree, whatever product. But can you go in and specifically target Whole Foods marketers, like Whole Foods consumers? Like somebody that's been in store and shopped X. I don't know if is there like I know they're using that information, but do you have the ability to go in and target that?
I believe there is an in-market audience segment that targets Whole Foods consumers. I haven't used it.
Then my idea or prediction is gone. So I'm going to lean on you while I'm thinking through something else.
I'm not 100% on that. I would say that I think that the audience, like the audience building functionality, I think will improve significantly. We've already seen in the last few months, like the new levers that have become available. What I would personally really love to see is more specific levers around targeting people who have purchased maybe like 2 times or 3 times, but the number of purchases, like we can tell if somebody had purchased in a given time frame, but like understanding that loyalty piece and being able to exclude those customers, or targeting people who we know maybe did purchase 5 times at the beginning of the year but haven't purchased. Like that's a customer that we would really want to reactivate. So like just more levers in being able to build audience based on like the
extreme loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam, you said it. I think Amazon's going to win on the brick and mortar will still be here. Brick and mortar will continue to be like what I believe to be like a brand presence more than it will be, you know, for true sales. Like you're still going to go to Costco, you're still going to go to like specific places to go get your goods, but the retail footprint will, like size of store will decrease, and Amazon will begin to have a better metric when it relates to in-store shopper tracking and how those decisions are made within the display network specifically. Like, okay, Joe and Jim and Sandra all walk through X door. Now they have the ability to apply that as a target or a cohort. And I think that is definitely going to happen within the next year and a half. I mean, you've got partners like Place IQ and that are going to be challenged. I mean, they're doing amazing work. They're going to be challenged by some of the changes in cookie legalization that we're having that's going to happen very swiftly. But I think in general, Amazon's going to win there just with their in-store tracking tech and people that are buying that in to help improve just their sales.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's all about the marrying of online to offline retail. I think that's clearly a perhaps $1 trillion business, that if you're able to identify those shoppers along that journey, there's significant advertising capabilities there. Price, Lisa, thank you very, very much. This was awesome. Really, really enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time on the next summer sessions. Thanks again.